Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is, honestly, one of the most mind-blowing true stories in the entire history of global intelligence. We're looking at an undercover operative whose double life was so deeply embedded and so incredibly daring that it literally reshaped the modern Middle East. We are talking about a man who infiltrated the highest, most fiercely secure levels of a hostile government. He got so close to the top that he was actually considered for the role of Deputy Defense Minister. It's a crazy story of perfect memory, high-stakes deception, and ultimately, absolute sacrifice.
Part 1. Caught in the act. To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this story, we actually need to start right at the very end. Let's set the scene on a freezing, foggy morning that brought down an entire empire of secrets.
Picture this. It's January 24th, 1965. The time is exactly 8 a.m. We're in a wildly luxurious apartment right in the heart of Damascus, Syria. A wealthy, highly respected guy named Kamel Amin Thaabet is frantically tapping out a Morse code message. He's transmitting highly classified Syrian state secrets to his handlers in Israel, just like he's done for the past 3 years. He actually believes this is one of his final missions before finally going home to his wife and kids. He is completely, totally unaware that his reign as a master spy is about to brutally end.
But before his finger can even leave the transmission button, boom, the door to his apartment is violently kicked open. Syrian army soldiers just flood the room, completely surrounding him from all sides. In a single instant, the man poised to become a top leader in the Syrian government is unmasked. See, Kamel Amin Thaabet doesn't actually exist. He is, in fact, Israeli intelligence's greatest weapon, a man named Eli Cohen.
Which brings us to part 2. Becoming Kamel Amin Thaabet. So how in the world did an otherwise ordinary guy manage to pull off one of the greatest deceptions in history and infiltrate the highest echelons of a fiercely guarded nation? Well, let's break down the making of this master spy.
Let's look at the timeline. Born Eliyahu ben Shal Cohen in Alexandria, Egypt back in 1924, this guy had a superpower, a photographic memory. As a kid, he could literally memorize license plates just by casually watching cars roll past his balcony. While his family moved to Israel in 1949, Ilya actually stayed behind in Egypt doing some incredibly risky undercover Zionist work. He was even arrested during the 1954 Lavon affair, which was this covert op where agents attacked targets and blamed local groups to stir up instability. They eventually released him because they lacked evidence. But by 1957, the Suez Crisis happened, and he was expelled from Egypt entirely, arriving in Israel as a refugee.
And here is the crazy part. When Eli first got to Israel, he was eager to do fieldwork, but Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, actually rejected him, not once, but twice. They literally pegged him as unfit, so he just resigned himself to being a filing clerk. But as the threat of a united Egypt and Syria started growing, Mossad desperately needed eyes inside Damascus. They went digging through the rejected files, noticed his photographic memory, his fluency in Arabic dialects, French, and English, and suddenly realized, wow, we have a uniquely perfect asset right here. So they recruited him, completely erased Eli Cohen, and rebirthed him as Kamel Amin Thaabet, a wildly wealthy Argentine-Syrian textile tycoon.
Part 3. Infiltrating Syria's high society. Armed with this brand new identity, plus 6 months of grueling training in cryptography, map reading, and evasion, he couldn't just walk straight into Damascus. He had to make Damascus want him.
So in 1961, he moves to Buenos Aires, Argentina, to build this rock-solid cover as a wealthy Syrian expat. He threw these incredibly lavish, expensive parties, and he'd cleverly criticize Israel loud enough for everyone to hear just to prove his fierce Syrian patriotism. And it worked. He won the deep trust of some major key figures, most notably an exiled military attaché named Amin al-Hafiz. Now remember that name because Amin al-Hafiz was remarkably destined to soon become the president of Syria. Armed with a glowing recommendation letter from a very prominent Arab editor, his cover was absolutely watertight. By 1962, he officially relocated to an elite neighborhood right in Damascus.
Part 4. Stealing Syria's deepest secrets. Now that he's fully established in Damascus, living right there among the ambassadors and political elites, the whole operation just shifts into high gear. His apartment basically became the absolute epicenter of Syrian political and military gossip.
He's spending fortunes throwing these wild parties at his flat for military officers and government ministers. He's pouring the world's most premium liquor, and well, when the booze flowed, the secret spilled. And for the guys who didn't drink, he arranged for female companions, who were actually covert honeypot agents, to extract whatever information they needed.
He absorbed their deepest, most classified military strategies, transmitting it all back to Israel using invisible ink and a hidden radio. He was so deeply trusted that Syrian generals literally gave him private VIP tours of top-secret frontline military positions just to show off their new weaponry.
And then there's this stroke of absolute tactical genius. During a tour of the highly fortified Golan Heights, Eli notices the Syrian soldiers just baking in the blistering heat. Playing the perfect caring patriot, he says, "Hey, why not plant some eucalyptus trees over your hidden bunkers to give the men some shade?" The Syrian commanders loved it, so they planted them. But those trees served a devastating secondary purpose. They became exact, highly visible target markers for future Israeli airstrikes.
He also uncovered this massive, top-secret engineering plot to divert the waters of the Jordan River. To put that into perspective for a second, that river supplied 30% of Israel's entire water consumption. 30%! That is a make-or-break number, because Eli transmitted the exact engineering plans, maps, and diagrams back home. Israeli airstrikes were able to hit the project with terrifying precision in November 1964, completely obliterating the infrastructure in just a matter of hours.
Part 5. The fatal radio signal. At this point, Eli's influence is completely peaking. I mean, elites are literally suggesting he should be prime minister, or at least deputy defense minister. But the net is silently, quickly closing in.
So we have to ask, how did the perfect spy finally get caught? Well, the Syrian leadership was absolutely stunned by the pinpoint accuracy of those Israeli airstrikes on their water project. Only a handful of top officials even knew the details of that plan. They realized, with absolute certainty, they had a mole. Desperate, they reached out to their Soviet allies for help in tracking down the leak. By January 1965, brand new, highly advanced Soviet radio tracking equipment arrives in Damascus to hunt the mole. Syrian counterintelligence instantly orders a strict 24-hour military radio silence. With all official transmissions completely halted, they started scouring the city for any rogue, unauthorized radio waves.
And here is the fatal mistake. Mossad had given Eli a very strict rule. Transmit only once a day to minimize your exposure. That's it. But Eli, maybe he was getting a bit overconfident, or maybe he was just overly eager to send some fresh intel. He ignored the rule. He transmitted during the absolute worst possible time, the radio blackout. That Soviet tracking tech picked up his signal instantly, and it literally walked the Syrian military right up to his front door.
Part 6. Execution and Immortal Legacy. The revelation that their beloved, trusted patriot Kamel Amin Thaabet was actually an Israeli spy, it sent absolute shockwaves through the highest levels of the Syrian government. The president himself, Amina Hafiz, who, remember, considered Eli a close personal friend, personally interrogated him in pure, utter disbelief.
Eli was thrown into prison and subjected to truly horrific torture. Yet, despite all of it, he was unyielding. He confessed to his true identity, sure, but he absolutely refused to surrender a single Israeli state secret or compromise his agency. Israel frantically tried to save him. They pleaded with foreign diplomats, they offered massive, unprecedented ransoms to Syria, but the Syrian leadership was just far too humiliated. His fate was sealed in a very rapid military trial.
Right before his execution, he was allowed to write one final letter to his wife, Nadia, and it is profoundly heartbreaking. He wrote, "My dear Nadia, I beg you not to mourn for me. Move on with your life so that our children may have a father." Even facing death, his entire focus was on his family's future, urging her not to just waste her life in grief.
On May 18, 1965, Eli Cohen was taken to a public square in Damascus. With a poster detailing his alleged crimes pinned right to his chest, he was publicly hanged. The execution was broadcast live on Syrian television, and his body was left hanging there for 6 hours in this grim, deeply public display of vengeance. To this very day, his remains have still not been returned to Israel.
But his intelligence work echoed long after his death. Just 2 years later, in 1967, the Six-Day War breaks out. And remember those eucalyptus trees Eli had convinced the Syrians to plant? Well, they served as perfect targeting coordinates. Because of his meticulous intelligence, the Israeli army was able to capture the heavily fortified Golan Heights in a mere 2 days. He literally changed the map of the region from beyond the grave. Which really brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We've seen the sheer brilliance, the incredible deception, and the massive historical impact here. But it leaves us with a really heavy question. When a nation's survival rests on the ultimate sacrifice of just one individual,
What is the true, devastating cost of espionage? Eli Cohen's story forces us to look past all the cool spy gadgets and the glamour and really reflect on the staggering personal price paid by those who live and ultimately die in the shadows. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope this look into the past helped you grasp the immense weight of this history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.